welcome to Soul Sparks, the podcast where science meets soul and curiosity lights up the path to a brighter life. I'm Pragya and your host for today. And together we explore stories, ideas, and insights that help us live with more purpose and passion. Today we have someone truly amazing and remarkable, Dr. Ryan Williamson, who is a neurologist, Navy veteran, entrepreneur, and founder of Transcend Health. Let's talk about his mission. So, his mission is to help us sharpen our minds, expand our longevity, and live lives filled with meaning. With his upcoming book, The Incredible Brain, Dr. Williamson blends science and strategy to show us how the human brain can be our greatest ally in creating a purposeful life. So get ready because today's conversation promises to spark your mind and your soul. First of all, welcome, Dr. Ryan. It is such a pleasure to have you on board with us today.
Thank you so much, Pragya. I'm happy to be here.
That's such a pleasure for us. Okay, so Dr. Williamson, your journey from Navy officer to neurologist to entrepreneur sounds like a movie, and it sounds amazing. And I'm so sure that you had to go through a tough routine of discipline, even sometimes precision in the labs, not sometimes necessarily precision in the lab, now purpose in the world of health. So, how have these roles shaped the way you see the human mind? And yes, can you please share that with us?
Well, thank you for the kind words. Probably sounds much more exciting on paper than doing it every day. But no, it does take quite a journey to get through medical training. And the military was a parallel that was always an interest of mine from a young age. I'd always wanted to serve. Ironically, I didn't know the military had physicians when I was younger, which seems like a very silly thing now since that was my job for quite some time. But I went through medical school and the Navy paid my way and fell in love with the brain through my neuroanatomy courses in medical school and even some early experiences I had. I get into this in my upcoming book, The Incredible Brain, but I suffered a large degree of loss early in childhood and had a handful of family members that passed away when I was very young. And among those was my grandfather who had Parkinson's. And I just remember thinking, I mean, why is this happening? And why can't my grandfather get up out of a wheelchair? I mean, I've seen pictures of him as this robust, kind of had a reputation for being very funny and had just this great sense of humor and just a very liked guy. And my only memories of him are being stuck in a wheelchair, really unable to speak or do much. So I say that not to bring the mood down, but more to highlight the fact that I was exposed early to human suffering, and it really got some gears turning early for me as to how does the brain work? How does the body work? And more importantly, how might I be able to help with that? And so fast forward through my time in the military, I worked with mostly young, healthy people by definition to help keep Marines and sailors on the battlefield. And really, it was more focused on performance and health maintenance than it was on dealing with conditions like Parkinson's or Alzheimer's or strokes. But when I left the military a few years ago, that's what I returned to when I went back to the hospital. And it saddened me all over again because so many of these conditions are in fact preventable, and we don't teach that conventionally. So I've spent a lot of time looking at the literature around what actually helps, or what actually helps keep people healthy and away from developing chronic disease. So problems like high blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol, things like this that the vast majority of at least Americans deal with and is becoming a growing problem around the world. And when these conditions are present for decades or more, the kind of inevitable result are these terrible diagnoses that people end up with that not only shorten life, but they rob us of our best years and our ability to continue doing the things that matter. So I have pivoted my work towards trying to help keep people healthy again and focus on maintaining that performance rather than just diagnosing people with what are really preventable conditions.
I love that. Also, thank you for sharing your Navy journey, medical school journey, and your health basically journey with us. Yes, I love that. I love that. Also, you've mentioned how you've always wanted to be something, and you've just it was just constantly in your mind. And I love that basically because, it shows that if we have things in our mind, even when harsh turning points come, as you mentioned, your grandfather not being there in your life anymore. So, those turning points, those really, really change our lives in better ways sometimes, right?
Absolutely. Trauma is a word that gets used quite a bit these days, but I think to a large degree we all have some version of trauma, and there's little t trauma and big T trauma, and we can maybe table that for another discussion. People can react adversely or negatively to a trauma, meaning we can end up with conditions like PTSD if the trauma is great enough, or post traumatic stress disorder, which can be horribly disabling. And many people do struggle with that depending on what they face. But in other instances, people can find meaning in trauma and in suffering. And, it's not to say that my trauma is better or worse than the next person's, but I'm thankful that I've been able to find meaning in what I've been exposed to, and to translate that into a desire, a genuine desire to try to help more people, because I've seen it so much, and it really does break my heart to know what people deal with, and to have to continue to have these conversations with patients' families about why their loved one's not going to wake up or make a full recovery, or that has some progressive, irreversible condition that's going to deteriorate their body in a matter of months or years. And many times when we're at that point, when the event has already happened, there's little hope for making a full recovery. But Pragya, if we start earlier, and this is really what I want your audience to know and understand, if we start now, we can maintain our health, and maintain excellent health, all other factors being considered, of course, avoiding, the accidents and misfortunes that do happen from time to time, but everything else being equal, assuming, God forbid, we don't get hit by a bus when we walk out of the podcast studio or whatever, your health is largely in your control. And I just think more people need to know that.
They surely do. And yes, that is also true. Anyways, our health is in our own hands. We either destroy it totally or we save it. Right? Also, as we've talked about people and how they suffer through a lot of things, I won't say that this thing that we'll talk about next is a suffering, but a lot of people face that and it is an issue, right? So I'm talking about brain fog basically. So, there are a lot of people who might just be listening to us and they might also be experiencing this in their lives, that whenever they open their laptops or open their books, they just keep on staring at the screen or something else and their mind is totally blank. So what do you have to add upon that? And according to you, what's the most overlooked cause of this mental haze? And yeah, what are your views?
Yeah, that's a great question too. So I think that brain fog is a symptom that you very well described, and symptoms have causes, and there are a handful of potential causes of this depending on why someone might be facing this. But we really live in a world that unfortunately is not aligned with our biology. And what I mean by that is that when we think back to our hunter gatherer days, we were cavemen and cave women, so on and so forth. What did we do every day? Well, we moved a lot. We woke up with the sun, lived in tribes, and we had relationships that helped manage our stress effectively. We probably went periods of time without eating, and when we did, we were eating organic whole foods that were pulled or harvested from the land, or maybe from a small animal that we captured. Probably slept pretty well because we didn't have a whole lot to worry about, and we weren't staring into screens and using artificial lights and worried about what the next crisis might be that we hear on the news. As radically simple as that sounds, trying to mimic our natural biology and the world in which we evolved, I think, is the evidence shows us is the single greatest lever we have to pull, or maybe series of levers, because this does involve at least a few different maybe ways to restructure our life. But that's not the world we're born into. We're constantly told that we need to go to school, or we're handed processed food because it's convenient from a vending machine, or it's what's served at school. We're stressed about staying up to study for that test and staring at the computer to get the good grade, to create the opportunity to go have a more high paced, high stressful job that creates this rabbit hole of just this stress cycle. It is very possible, no matter where you are on that spectrum of growth, development, and just wherever you are in life, to be able to reclaim that control. And I also want your audience to know that. I mean, we talk a lot about opportunity, and certainly, it takes time and an investment in your education and in yourself to become the person you want to be, to achieve your goals. But along the way, there's just such a more fulfilling, healthier, better way to do that. That again gets back to that kind of that simplistic biology that we really need to respect, because it's how we operate.
Those were so many insights. And trust me, yeah, that is actually encouraging. And the way you've described it and the methods that I've shared are wonderful. Also, I wanted to ask one more thing, that the student, or the student cram for exams, or or the working parent who keeps on juggling between 10 things with their children, their nurturing, their nourishment, and all of it. So what is a one small practical shift that they can make today for better mental clarity? Or to simplify this question, I'm basically wanting to know one practice that you really think should be in everybody's life who's basically hustling at this point.
They're really a handful. But I think the easiest, the single simplest to modify, that hits everybody that you mentioned there, is to ensure quality sleep. And Pragya, this sounds so basic, but so many people still miss this. And take your student who's cramming for the exam, as you mentioned. Without quality sleep, your brain actually will not process and store that information as a long-term memory that can then be accessed for retrieval later on in an exam, or later on in a course, or is it something practical to know later in life. Sleep is the only time that happens. Not to mention, quality sleep is the greatest performance enhancer we have. And without that, our brain does not function very well. And until you can go through the appropriate stages of sleep, your brain is going to crave more sleep and is going to be running on fumes, so to speak, or at least not performing at peak potential. It's the only time that we recycle a molecule called adenosine that rises throughout the day, that contributes to the feeling of sleepiness, or also known as the sleep pressure. So sleep's the only time, or the only way, that we get to do that. Caffeine blocks adenosine, for what that's worth. So for those that like caffeine, maybe they like tea or coffee, that works temporarily, but the only substitute, the only way to get that to happen is to actually achieve quality sleep. And that's just for the memory and maybe the performance in the exam. But when we look, if you're an athlete, you like to exercise, it's the only time your muscles rebuild and grow. If you're worried about maybe getting sick, or you're around ailing relatives, or you live in a crowded city, that's the only way that your immune system actually maintains its health and function, because poor sleep actually can cause our immune system to malfunction. I mean, increases the risk for cancer, for heart attacks, for strokes, for diabetes. I mean, the list goes on, Alzheimer's. So quality sleep is imperative to living a healthy, functional lifestyle. And I think the same principles apply to the parent, right, who's trying to provide nourishment for their children and take care of a family, as you mentioned. And so that may beg the question, how can we do that? Well, when you wake up in the morning, within about an hour of awakening, back to this whole kind of caveman physiology we were referencing a minute ago, really try to get light exposure. And the best way to do this is to go outside and just allow some sunlight in your face or in your eyes for 10 to 15 minutes. Because what this does is it helps set what's called your circadian rhythm, which is this 24-hour rhythm that we all have, that allows our brain to know when it's time to be awake and alert and perform our best. And equally importantly, when the lights go down and when we're in the dark or at nighttime, it allows us to achieve better quality deep sleep. So priming that rhythm is very important, and just getting outside and even moving a little bit. So going for a walk, or if you like to exercise, getting exercise early, that helps with quality deep sleep, back to that muscle rebuilding I mentioned. And then equally importantly, at nighttime, before you go to bed, for at least an hour or two, I would encourage people to avoid screens of any kind, because screens, whether it's a smartphone, a computer, tablet, television, you name it, that emits a frequency of light that mimics sunlight. And if we are allowing that to penetrate our eyes, that actually sends a signal to our brain, in particular to a little structure called the pineal gland, which is what releases melatonin, which is the second way that our brain knows to fall asleep at nighttime. And it shuts off the release of melatonin. And that can be delayed by a period of up to several hours, even after the screen is shut off. So again, this relationship with light is very, very important for not only just our regular biology, but certainly for sleep.
Love that. Also, we've like you've spoken about, first of all, the method, not the method, but the fact that sleeping is actually really, really essential. And nobody but I should, first of all, take that advice and, implement it in my life. Jokes apart, thank you for sharing these advices, first of all, because a lot of people just, read them through posters or any of those things and they ignore it. But, when it comes from the professionals, and podcast is a very new thing, not a new thing, but a very popular thing among every generation, right? So it's really, really necessary for them to know all of this. And I love all the insights and advices that you've given. Also, you were talking about brain and all of it. So your new book was titled The Incredible Brain. It is also about to launch, right? And the title itself, it is so exciting. So tell us more about it. And yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit about the book, because I am very excited about it. But the Incredible Brain, yeah. So I'm not sure when this episode will air, but it launches on September 9th. So if we're past that, then it should be out for everybody. But I walk people through really kind of three main ideas. And the first idea is for everyone to have a clear sense of purpose in their life. Because, and this is why I love what you're doing here with Soul Sparks. I think this is just awesome. That this gets back to this idea of having a general North Star or a compass heading, or an idea of what gets you out of bed every day and what motivates you. Because a lot of people, as you said, on podcasts or social media or elsewhere, talk about living longer, or they talk about the next biohack or whatever the next popular thing is. But if we don't understand why we're doing any of that, then what does another month, 2 months, year, 6 years? I mean, pick a number. If you've extended your lifespan, I mean, if that's without purpose, really, that it doesn't matter. So I want people to understand their why and their purpose in life, because that serves as the foundation and the motivation to then stay on course and to go live an intentional, healthy lifestyle, to create your impact in the world, whatever that might be. And that's chapter one. But the first half of the book, I share a little bit about how your brain and your body work, and a little bit about that biology you and I were just talking about, and then paint a picture for how things might go wrong, not to scare people, but to just show the reality of how people end up with conditions like Parkinson's, like my grandfather, or like these other debilitating diseases that unfortunately I and my physician colleagues have to face in the hospital. And then the whole second half of the book is what to do about it, how to incorporate, or at least how to think about incorporating an intentional, healthy lifestyle, putting all of these principles into practice. And again, Pragya, this is all so accessible for people. I mean, I spend a lot of time in rooms where I hear people talking about needing to go spend all this money and do these maybe peptide injections, or fly to another country and get stem cells, or I mean, there's some really elaborate treatments that are out there, virtually none of which have any medical evidence behind them, by the way, that they extend lifespan. I mean, they might do, might help heal a joint or something, but when you look at what actually matters, it's either free or inexpensive for most people and very accessible. And I just think people need to know that.
First of all, congratulations on your book, and I'm looking forward to read it for sure. And yes, thank you for sharing that with us.
Well, thank you so much.
Also, okay, let's talk about distractions. So, this is such a controversial topic to talk about sometimes. But in today's world, distractions, they're literally everywhere. And they might be different for every individual, right? But the most common ones are whenever you're trying to do something, your phone dings or a video it pops up, and suddenly scrolling through reels, whether it's food reels, fashion reels, or whatever, an hour is gone. So, do you see focus as something that we can train like a muscle, or is it more like a resource that we have to protect? This example of distractions I gave was because we really have to put ourselves in a routine so that we do not distract ourselves, and we do not procrastinate much. So yes, what do you have to say on that?
I'm so glad you brought this up, because this is a very common scenario that people find themselves in with again, this modern technological era that we're in. And thank goodness for that, right? Because here you and I are, you know, miles apart, can communicate in real time and record a podcast and share ideas with your audience, and write books and just do great things. So, you know, it's not to say that technology is a bad thing, because I think it has improved the human living standard orders of magnitude further than what we were even just a few short years ago. But with the development of maybe different types of social media and smartphones and always being, you know, plugged in, you're right that this is a problem. And the data that I'm familiar with is the average adult attention span is about 8 seconds. And I find that comical, because when I look at my social media reels that I produce, which I aim to be educational or helpful or motivating, when I look at the average watch time, if it reaches a certain number of views, it always reduces to about 8 seconds, which I find fascinating. That is how narrow our attention span has become. The trouble is that the more we engage in this kind of behavior and we scroll, our brain does like new and stimulating content, which is why this is such an easy feature to build in that these program engineers have figured out. But the more we do that, the more we are propagating those mechanisms, because your brain has this feature called neuroplasticity, where it can rewire around the behaviors or the inputs that you give it to produce a given output. So if you are constantly engaged in social media and you're scrolling, and, you know, 30 minutes, an hour, or however long goes by, and you go, oh my gosh, where did the time go? Well, congratulations, you've just trained your brain to want to do that more in the future. The opposite is true, in that you can train your brain how to not do this and how to gain agency and control over your mind. And there are a handful of ways to do this. So regular daily exercise would be one. Quality sleep would be another. Proper nutrition would be another. So that's why the literature does come back to these. But mindfulness is another. So being present in the moment and being appreciative for what you have and experiencing what's in front of you through gratitude. These all independently correlate with increased focus and increased executive function and control over your habits by strengthening what's called your prefrontal cortex. Different types of breath work, believe it or not, can do this. So intentional deep breathing over time can enhance agency and control over a different region in the prefrontal cortex, which will help, again, reduce the likelihood that you are more reactive and more passively engaged in some of these behaviors. And I mean, there are a handful more, but those are several that sort of come to top of mind. I mean, I know we have limited time here, but I could spend hours on this, but I hope those help.
Yes, they surely do. And this is so powerful, you know, the thing that you said about the attention span. That is so true nowadays. See, I am also from that generation wherein, you know, scrolling reels is our favorite pastime. But that is irritating sometimes, because it is also so hard to watch movies as well nowadays. Like, you know, those 2-hour movies are also so difficult to watch because attention spans are so less. And yes, there is a need to work on that. So truly said. Also, you talk not just about the health, but also about legacy, as I mentioned in the intro as well. So yeah. So how does brain optimization, how does it connect with living a life that actually matters, which is not just longer, but also fuller at the very same time?
Yes, that's where the impact piece comes in. So the subtitle of the incredible brain is Proven Science Behind Living a Longer, Healthier, More Impactful Life. And the impact piece is the legacy piece. And I think that, you know, back to that why and that North Star we were talking about a minute ago. You know, I think when people envision legacy, at least when many people envision legacy, I think it's something that you leave when you're gone, or maybe how people remember you. But I would argue that legacy is created every single day. It's our conversations. It's how we carry ourselves. It's how we show up for other people. Now, it's, do we hold the door for a stranger? You know, are we kind to others? I mean, that's the legacy that you're creating and that you're living, that then creates the memories that other people have of you or what you've done, whether it's you're a podcast host, or maybe you wanted to write a book or become a teacher, or, you know, back to the parent you were mentioning who's raising their children to be the next generation. It's how you're showing up and it's what you're doing. And if your brain and your body are not optimized to be your best self for the world, then you're doing a disservice to not only you, but to everybody, because you're not able to express and be your fullest self that you were meant to be. So it really, I think spending time on, again, getting clear on your intention and understanding how your brain, your body work, and then how to optimize it is not only helping you, but it's elevating humanity collectively.
That is fascinating. Yes, also for someone who's listening who feels stuck on autopilot or, yes, they're just stuck. So, what is that one step that they can take today? It does not necessarily mean for their health, but anything that you would love to share, and that one advice that a person should always, always follow. What is that one thing?
I would say be kind to yourself. Give yourself permission to make mistakes and don't think that you have to get it perfect because most of the time we won't. We're human. By definition, we are not perfect. And measure backwards. What I mean by that is rather than worrying about the ideal goal or pursuit of perfection or whatever you think you should be or want to be in the future, rather than looking forward, look backward and think, gee, look at where I've come. Look at who I am now and how much I've grown or developed as a person. And that will build massive confidence, reassurance, and validation that if you continue to push forward in spite of doubt or maybe a little bit of discomfort, which you should embrace, by the way, because that means you're moving in the right direction. But I think that will give you the confidence to continue to excel in life no matter where you are.
That's so, so sweet. And not just sweet, but it's clearly the best advice that one can have. And yeah, it was so fascinating. Listeners, what a fascinating conversation this has been. And thank you, Dr. Ryan Williamson, for this amazing, amazing conversation that you've given to us and the insights that you've given. Those were really, really wonderful. And you basically remind us that, our brain, it isn't just an organ, it is also the command center for clarity, and not just for clarity, focus, legacy that we leave behind, and everything. And if there is one thing to take away today, for me, it will be this, that even small, consistent steps towards a better brain health can open doors to a brighter, more purposeful life. And not just for brain health, but overall perspective of ours, overall personality of ours. This is Pragya Malvia, your host for Soul Sparks. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and most importantly, keep sparking your soul. And also do not forget to give an attempt to reading Dr. Ryan's book. And yeah, I hope his insights, they really, really resonate with you. And